Hi everybody, and welcome to the second of the November Bench Buddies. This is the square one, and this one's called Flower Pumpkin. So it's a square bench, the little square bench bunny. This one's 8 by 8. And then the applique is going to be this cute little pumpkin down here. And then this one we're going to decorate it with the pull flowers. So they did quite a few pull flowers. I'm sorry, it's just a little bit dark. But there's 5 different colored pull flowers in the fall set, and they had you do one of each one. So we're going to put the little flowers on it and make it's like a little flower pot that's a pumpkin on the bottom. So this is going to be the second November Bench Buddy, the square one. Okay, so that's what we're going to be making. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what we need for the pieces. We need a background piece. Let me get my nickel out of the way. We need a background piece for the pumpkin, and I've got this piece here, and it's 10.5 by 10.5. I have ironed a piece of the Shapeflex Pellon SF101 on the back, so that's what's on the back of that. So it's a piece of kind of light colored, cream colored fabric with the Shapeflex on the back. And then we need the pumpkin applique, which is this pretty piece of orange. I think that's 5 by 7.5. And then you need some borders for around the outside edge. So there's 2 that are 1.5 by 8.5. There's 2 that are 1.5 by 10.5. And then there's 2 back pieces, and these are 7 by 10.5. And then I have already turned back on one of the 10.5 inch sides. I have already turned them back to hem them. So turned it back a quarter of an inch and a quarter of an inch. Okay. So we'll talk about that a little bit when we go to construct the pillow, but I just did the ironing while I was up. So I got those. Okay. We'll get these out of the way. We don't need those right away. And then in the instructions here, it tells you to use cutaway. I have a tendency to like to use tearaway for these because I like to be able to tear the stabilizer off the back so that it doesn't kind of wrinkle when I put the pillow in. So I am using a tearaway, and you're going to just use a piece of tearaway. Just a second here. I'm going to turn the page. You're going to hoop just your tearaway. Again, I used the Shapeflex on the back of my main fabric here, and I have just hooped my tearaway in a 5 by 7 hoop. And then the first thing that's going to stitch out on the design, so I've got my design up. Let me show you on my machine here. It's the little pumpkin here. So you can see it's this little pumpkin here. So the first thing that sews out is going to be a little placement line for the fabric. So we're not actually going to put the fabric in the hoop and hoop it. We're going to use a placement line on this one. So I've got my tearaway stabilizer in my hoop. I'm going to thread my machine with some orange thread. I've got bobbin thread in the bobbin, and I've got my number 11 needle in the machine. Number 11 embroidery needle in the machine. And the first step is going to be that little placement line so we know where to put this piece of fabric. So we'll sew that out first. And I'm just going to use the orange for that so I can see it real well. And what it did is it gave us a little tick mark right here in the center. So that's where the center is going to be. And it shows you in the instructions to do all this drawing and everything on your fabric, but I actually didn't do that. What I did is I took my 10.5 by 10.5 inch square, and on one side of it, I just folded it in half and just pressed a little center mark on the ends here. And then I know that's where that's going to lay, right on that little tick mark. Okay. Then what you're going to do is you're going to put the bottom of let's see if we'll pull this back just a little bit. I'm going to put the bottom of the fabric along this line right here that it made, and then that center mark that I just created on the tick mark. Okay. But what I did is I put a little bit of glue stick down on the paper, or on the stabilizer. So we're just going to take a little bit of glue stick and paint some glue stick on here so that it'll hold it down for us. I'm gonna take and I want most of the bottom of my pumpkin is inside. So I want most of the fabric to the left. And I'm gonna lay that bottom piece of the fabric right along that line that it sewed. And then I'm going to lay the little center mark right on the tick mark. And I'm just going to press this down to my stabilizer. And they are going to do a basting line. So you really wouldn't have to do the basting line, but I think it keeps it from moving a little bit. I mean, since I got the glue stick on there, but I think it'll be just fine. Well, I'll just go ahead and do the basting stitch. Okay, so the second step in the machine is going to be the basting stitch. So this is a real fast, simple project because it's just this one applique, and most of this pillow is going to be the construction of it, and then also putting flowers on. All right, so we're going to do the basting line here. It's just going to hold that down. We'll take that out in a little bit. And I just left my orange thread in there so I could see it really easy. Okay, so now we're ready to do our applique. So the applique is this pumpkin, and step number 3 is going to be the placement line. Step number 3 in the machine, and it's going to be step number 6 in the instructions on page 3. So we're going to do our placement line for our pumpkin applique. This was really fun. I'm not very good at the pull flowers, I have to admit. That's the hardest part for me. So I pre-made some of them before this video so I wouldn't have to sit and struggle through 5 flowers in front of you. But I have gotten kind of a couple little tricks that seem to help me, so hopefully you won't have any trouble with them. Okay, so then we're going to lay our fabric in here right side up over the placement line and make sure everything's covered. And then step number 4 in the machine is going to be the tack down line. So we'll tack down our little pumpkin. It's like I got some strings in there I got to pull out. This was really fun though. I actually really enjoyed this after I got through the flowers. I always sweat when I have to make the flowers, but I have I found a couple little tricks that work for me. So hopefully I'll help you out so you don't struggle with them like I have in the past. But they are really cute and they have all these pretty colors. So I actually bought 1 package of the pull flowers, and I got 2 pillows out of that 1 package because there was you cut the there's like a yard of each one and you cut it in half. So I got 2 pillows out of 1 package. Okay, so now we're going to trim our applique like we have many times before. We're going to trim our applique close to the stitches all the way around, even on the bottom. That's actually going to be in the seam allowance, so that'll just be a raw edge at the bottom, like down here, because that'll be in the seam allowance. Okay, so this is going to go around here. So you can see what I'm doing. Getting close here, there we go. This was a real fun one. Didn't take very long. It took me longer to, like I said, it took me longer to make my flowers than it did for me to do the applique part because it was very fast. Okay, then we're going to put this back in here. And step number 5 in the machine is going to be the satin stitches and some decorative stitches in the pumpkin. And I used my orange for that. And I'm just going to leave that same color in, and it's going to start this satin stitches. So it's going to do all the satin stitch outside lines and then the decorative lines on the inside of the pumpkin. So I'll probably go ahead and pause the video. I'll get this started, and I'll pause the video for a little bit while this is sewing so you don't have to sit here and watch the whole thing go, because it does take a little bit for this part to sew. So it's going to do the little lines in the middle of the pumpkin first, and then it does the satin stitching along the outside. So I'll get it started and then I will pause the video until it's closer to being done. I used, this is the Brother color. It's called Orange Aid. I think it's, let's see if I can find a number here. I used a green and an orange only in this one. Orange Aid is number 1122, and it's one of the newer Brother colors. So there's the little line it's doing on the pumpkin, and then it's going to do a couple, it does a couple of those, and then it's going to do the satin stitch outline. So I'll pause the video until it's a little closer to being done. Okay, so it's just finished up the satin stitching on the pumpkin, and we're ready to go on to the step number 6 in the machine, which is the last step for the embroidery part, and it's going to do the little vine. So I did that in green. Let me just a second here, and we'll switch the color. And I did that in moss green, which is 515 in the Brother thread. See if I can reach it. And then we'll go on to the construction of the pillow. This was a real fast one. I really enjoyed this one a lot. Okay, so here's our little moss green, which is the little vine. It's just a little triple stitch, so I'll just hang on. I'll just go ahead and we'll just do this one together. Just takes a couple minutes. There we go. I think that's it. Right, so there's our little vine on our pumpkin. Okay, the machine's going to sing to us and tell us we're finished sewing. So then we're going to go ahead and take this out of the hoop. And give me a second here. Yep, we're going to take it out of the hoop, and then we got to take those basting stitches out. So I'm going to take this out. And I like to leave my stabilizer on, my tearaway stabilizer on until after I've trimmed it. So we're going to leave the stabilizer on. But let's go ahead and take these basting stitches out. Oops, got to find my seam ripper wherever I put it. And I've learned a couple little tricks about taking basting stitches. I've always struggled with getting basting stitches out. And I've learned that if I go on the top and then and cut through about every third stitch or so, then I can just take it and pull, and get this pulled back just a bit. I can just pull the bobbin thread on the back, and then it comes out pretty quickly. So let's see if we can test that theory. I'm not a very good, I've never liked taking basting stitches out. So I never use them unless I have to. Or I put them in a place where I don't have to remove them. On my own quilt, that's what I did. I made them out far enough so that you did not have to remove them. They can just be in the seam allowance. Okay. So we're kind of going around about every third or fourth stitch. These are pretty long stitches. And then we'll turn it over and grab the bobbin thread and see if we can get the basting stitches out real quick. So I am getting better at this. Just figured out a couple things. Okay, so let's turn this over. I'm going to go grab one of the piece of the bobbin thread. Just grab the bobbin thread here, and then see if I just pull, then they just pop right out. I'll trim this off. We'll have to do a little cleanup. There's going to be a corner that's kind of stuck in there, but it's going to be in the seam. So you see how quickly those came out? Look at that. Very quick. Second, I got to pop up over my screen so I can't see where my camera is. See? I'm just clean those out now. It came off really quickly. So I've learned, I'm teachable. I've learned a few things about little things like that to make it faster, because it seems like we have to take a lot of basting stitches out of things. And I've always hated doing it. And I learned this when I was working with my quilting You know, when I was quilting in my hoop, I found, you know, if I had to take out some quilting stitches, which I do occasionally, it's very time consuming, and I found this little trick, and it really does work. Okay. All right, there we go. So there's our basting stitches out of there. Just gonna get rid of them. And then the next step that I'm going to do is we're going to be trimming this here in a minute, but I'm going to take this over to the ironing pad right now, and I'm going to just press this down. Like, I'm not going to press up in here too much, but I want to press down around where the paper is, where the stabilizer is, so that it's nice and flat before we go to trim it. And then I'm going to be trimming this with a orange pop ruler. And then, so we'll be back in a minute here, and we'll just do the trimming. Okay, so I have my orange pop ruler, and we're going to use the 8.5 by 8.5, it says here. And the pumpkin is going to lay on the bottom edge of the design. So it's actually going to be in the seam allowance. So I'm going to lay, I want to center it side to side, but I want the pumpkin to be at the bottom edge. So just a second, let me pull my camera back just a little bit so you can see. Okay, so I'm going to lay the pumpkin on the bottom edge, and I've got my Martelli rotating mat here, and it really helps a lot to have a rotating mat when you're using these pop rulers, because otherwise things don't, it's very hard to get them to turn without moving something. So I really love my my Martelli rotary mat, and it has like a Lazy Susan on the bottom, so it really turns really easily. Okay, so I'm kind of just using the fabric to help me, you know, side to side, and I'm going to visually look, and it looks pretty good. But I want that little, I want just a teeny little space around, you know, just underneath the pumpkin maybe, so that I can run my rotary blade right through there. Okay, so the pumpkin's basically just right on the bottom of the fabric. And it's going to be right on the inside edge of this ruler. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and trim this, and we're just going to trim it to 8.5 by 8.5. So this is an easy trim. I'm going to place my ruler on here and make sure I've got it straight. I think I do. And I'm going to go ahead and run this along the bottom edge, and just be careful and slow doing this. You can also mark your design if you don't like to cut on these with cutting on the inside. If it's hard for you, just go ahead and just mark it with a pen, like a water soluble pen. And pull this up a little bit. Sorry, my camera is not the greatest for this rotating mat where I'm at. So let me see if I can get the camera pulled back just a little bit more, then you can see a little better. There we go. So I'm going to do this side. So this is the third side, and I kind of like to pull back into the corner. But I'm just kind of deliberate when I do this, because I struggled a little bit, you know, with using these two, and I just kind of do it slowly, and I take my time when I cut, and I'm getting the hang of it, and so I really like them. Okay, so then we're going to remove the, oops, I think I missed a little spot there, so I have to get my rotary cutter down here. Just missed a little spot there. There we go. Need to get a new rotary blade, I think. Okay, there we go. So there is our 8.5 by 8.5 piece ready for our pillow top, the pillow front. And then now at this point, what I'll do is I will remove my stabilizer, so that I don't have all that stabilizer in there. And I won't take, you don't have to take it all off. In fact, I don't even know if I took it out of the pumpkin. I think I did, because it's easy to get out of the middle of the pumpkin here. Just kind of pull this out too, so then it makes it a little softer, and it doesn't pull when you go to put your pillow in. Just be careful around your your little straight stitches down here, that you don't pull too much on them. So, but I think that's enough. We can just take a little bit of it out. But that was fun, because it could be done in a 5x7 hoop. It looks like a big pillow front, but it's not very big, because the actual design was real small. All right, so let's get the rest of this out of here. Must have a little bit of glue under that one, and I'll take a little bit out of this side too. So if you don't get it all out of there, it's fine. There's the Shape Flex gives it a little body also. All right. So then we're going to have our stabilizer removed. And we're ready to move the machine over to sewing, and we're going to put our pillow together. So we're actually going to put the whole pillow together and put the pillow form in it before we make our pull flowers. All right, so there's my front. It's all ready to be sewn into the pillow. So let me get my machine set up for sewing, and then we will move on to the next step, which is going to be putting the pillow, doing the backs, and we're going to put the back on and put our little flanges on, so it's going to be really cute. So I'll pause the video for a minute and I'll be right back. Okay, so I've got my machine switched over to sewing, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put our little, we're going to go ahead and put our little flanges on, or the little borders on here. And we're going to start with the side ones, and the side ones are going to be the 8.5 inch ones. And you can see my flanges are just a little darker color than my main body part, or the background part. So I'm going to go ahead and I've got a kind of a cream colored Pima cotton quilting thread in here. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use Q02 on the machine, and we're going to be doing this with a 1/4 inch seam. So I've moved my needle over to the right so I can just run my fabric along the edge of the, or my foot along the raw edge of the fabric there. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and put these little borders on. We're going to do the side ones first. Get this one on. I've got it all lined up. Okay, do the other one, and then I'm going to get up an iron real quick so that I can press these out, so when I go to do the top and bottom ones. So I want to make sure these are nice and flat before I go on to the next two. All right, get that lined up there. So yeah, so these are the 8.5 inch ones. Oops, got a little excited there, didn't I? All right, let's get this one lined up. Doing our 1/4 inch seam with Q02. I like that piecing stitch. I don't like to, I'm kind of lazy. I don't like to have to change my foot all the time, but you can sure use a piecing foot if you prefer. And then you would use the needle in the center position for that foot. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this over to my ironing mat, and I'm going to iron these, press these out, and then we're going to come back and we're going to do the top and the bottom flanges. Okay, so now we're going to do the top and bottom little border flanges. I'm going to get a couple little pins out here so that I can keep those little seams flat so they won't roll over on me when I go over them. So get those all lined up. And we'll do the top and the bottom flange. This was a real simple one because it didn't have a bunch of piecing and stuff like the last time. We had to do all that cute little piecing with all the blocks, but this one went really fast because it didn't have all the little teeny pieces to cut. This was just top and bottom. All right, let's see here. Again, I'm doing my 1/4 inch seam. Now these are those really, really soft pins. Do not try this with any other pins other than these little thin, extra fine magic pins. I do drive over my pins, but only with those. I do not ever drive over any other pin. This is the only ones that are soft enough, and they're very small, and I don't drive over them 100 miles an hour. All right, so there's the top. I'm going to do the bottom one. I'm going to do the same thing. Get it all lined up here so that those seams stay nice and flat. Make sure you got it lined up over here. All right, I'm going to put a pin in the middle, I think, too. All right, then we're going to do 1/4" seam, do this one. Yeah, these magic pins are up on the Shield Sewing Center website, and they are the best pins, and they're very sharp. So I like really good pins that are very small. That's the only kind of pins I use. I don't own any other pins, and I just really like these a lot. They make some that are a little bit longer too, so if you like a longer pin, I like short ones, but they do make a little one that's just a little bit longer also. So if you like a long pin, but these are so great because the little tips, see these little tops? These little tops don't melt. So if you touch them with your iron by accident, they don't melt. They just, and they're easier to grip because they're long. You know, they're not just a little ball. And these are longer, and it's easier to get hold of them. Okay, so now I'm going to take this back over to my ironing mat, and I'm going to press these out. So then that'll be our top. Okay, so before we do that, I'm going to show you, we'll do the little, prepare our envelope back. So I told you before that I had these turned down. I pressed it down 1/4 inch and another 1/4 inch. So I'm going to move my needle to the center position now, and I'm just going to hem these. And I'm going to use Q01, which is the center needle position. And I'm just going to hem these down so that we're ready for the back to be put on. So I already had these pressed because I did that in advance, but some of it I can't do in advance, but that's one thing I can. So let's get this hemmed. I love envelope backs because they look so neat and so professional. Okay, got one of them. Let's get the other one here. And this one's really cool because it has the flanges. So we're going to, just like we did on the little witch, that's the topsy-turvy witch, that one was done the same way. So what we're going to do is we're going to sew this together, right sides together, and then flip it. And then we're going to stitch in the ditch around the center section. That makes the flange. Okay, so we got those all hemmed. Now I need to go do a little pressing, and then we'll come back and we're going to start putting our pillow together here. So here's my hems. Got my hems all done for my envelope back. Okay, so give me a second, and I'm going to go do some pressing, and I'll come back and we'll put this together. Okay, so I pressed my little borders, my flanges out, and they're all nice and flat now. And so now we're going to put the backing on. In the instructions, it actually tells you to make your pull flowers before you do the rest of the pillow, but we're going to finish the pillow and then we'll go back to the pull flowers, because I like to have my pillow form actually in the pillow, because then I know exactly where they're going to end up when I put the pillow form in. So sometimes I have trouble with getting things placed if I don't have the pillow form in there. So we're gonna do it kind of a little bit backwards. But all right, so I'm going to go ahead and put my envelope back on. Now I like my opening to be up and down, but you can put it horizontally if you want, whichever you like. I've always done mine up and down. So, all right, so I'm going to line these up. So here I'm having a little trouble with this one. I like to make sure I pin right where that overlap's going to be, because I want to go over that a couple times so that I have a nice strong overlap. Pin the corner here. Let's go down and get these. So I'm just matching up my raw edges, and I've got the hem on the inside. So I'm matching up my raw edges here. Get my corners matched up. I am not the best cutter in the world, so it seems like my backs are always a little off. So if it looks a little off, it probably is. Okay, so let's get this one. Okay, so that's where the other inside corner is. Put a pin here and put a cup here, so we can get this side done, and then we'll do the other side. So I usually just do one side at a time. It seems to work better for me to match up all those raw edges. I just love envelope backs though. They look so cool. They turn out so pretty, and then you don't have to put zippers in and all that kind of stuff. So whoever invented the envelope back was a genius. Okay, So let's, oops, second here, we're going to have stuff on the floor. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I've got my raw edges. The right sides are together. I'm matching up my raw edges here. I'm going to pin the corner. And then this is where that little overlap is going to be. So I want to make sure that I know exactly where both little overlap pieces are, because we are going to sew over that a couple of times just to make sure it's nice and strong. So I'll put the pin on the outside here. There we go. Go down here. All right, let's go get this side. Then we'll go back to the edge. Make sure this is good and overlapped well. And then get this one. That's where that other little piece is. So that's one of the spots we want to make sure we know where it's at. Okay, so let's get this one, and then we're just going to drive all the way around. So we're going to sew all the way around the outside edge, and then this is where we can put the pillow in, down here and where the little envelope is. This is so cool. I always thought this was amazing. The first time I made one of these, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. Then I don't have to put a zipper in. Okay, I'm going to go back to Q02, which is my 1/4 inch seam. And I'm going to start where one of those little overlaps is, because I want to show you what I do. I like to go over. I'm going to pull a couple, that pin anyway. So I like to go back over it. So I'm just going to go over that area, and then I'm going to back up over it and then go back again. So that way it's strong. So this one is not as bad because, you know, we're going to do a stitch in the ditch also. So it's not as bad to for the strength of that area, especially if you're using cotton thread. You know, the cotton thread is a little bit more, it breaks a little easier. So you get quite a bit of stress on that section normally when you're putting a pillow in. So I always like to sew over them a couple times. All right. And as you can see, I sometimes pull my pins too. So, but these, like I said, you can take what I do with a grain of salt. If you don't want to drive over your pins, you can sure pull them out. I do throw away a lot of pins because I drive over them and the foot bends them. These are so soft that I throw away a lot of pins. So I buy a lot of pins. So that's one bad thing, is that I go through more pins probably because I do drive over them. But I found these magic pins several years ago, and oh my gosh, they are so nice. And they're so sharp. I didn't realize how dull some pins can be until I was at the store, and I didn't have any of these pins at the store for some reason. And I was using the pins that were there, and they were pretty good pins. They were like glass head, extra fine glass head pins that I'd gotten at, I think they were Dritz. And oh my gosh, these are so much sharper. It is amazing how much sharper they are. So if you like good pins, buy some of these. Because I like sharp pins, because otherwise it's like trying to stab a toothpick through your fabric. All right, so we're going to go around the other side here. Got that one kind of squished in, so let's pull that one out too. Sometimes I'm pretty good about pulling them, but when I have trouble, I like to leave pins in when I'm quilting and piecing, because I have trouble with things scooching on me, like the seams where they come together. And that's when I learned about these little thin pins, because I do better with them. I don't have my seams off all the time. Okay, so we'll cut there, and we're got all the way around. So the next step is going to be to turn it right side out. I'm just going to make sure I'm not missing anything. And I don't like to cut those corners. So what I'm going to do is my grandma's little trick. I'm going to take my first finger, I'm going to slip it up into the corner, and then I'm going to pull the seam allowance down to the seam line like this. And then I'm going to push it in and see how I made the corner. I made the perfect corner. And I'm going to hold it with my thumb, and I'm going to turn it right side out. We're going to do that on all 4 corners, and then we're going to use our little Floriani point turner just to finish it up. That way you do not have to cut. If you cut your corners, you will go through them every time. Because everybody always tells you to cut your corners, and I just don't like that at all. So I've been doing corners like this for years, and that way it even works with bulky fabric. I mean, I can do a really good corner. You know, there's a few that don't turn out as well, but oh my gosh, this one's really easy. Okay, so I'm going to grab my point turner here and make sure I just kind of finish off my corners so that they're nice and pointy. Looks good. And then I'm going to take this over to my ironing board again, and I'm going to iron this so that it's nice and flat. So there's our top with the back on. Okay, we want this to be nice and flat before we go on to the next step, because the next step is going to be stitching in the ditch along here so that it makes our flange, and then this is the area where the pillow is going to fit. Okay, so I'll be right back. I'm going to run over to the ironing table and get that all nice and flat. Okay, so I've got my little top all pressed here, and now I'm going to stitch in the ditch. And so there's a lot of ways to do this. I have a tendency just to use my regular J-foot. I like to place the needle in the center, so I'm going to go back to Q01. I'm going to leave this kind of, and you want a matching thread. So you want the thread to really match, you know, like the inside piece. So this is kind of a creamy color, and I've got this creamy color cotton in here. But down here where the pumpkin is, I'd see that cream really a lot. So I actually have some orange thread that I'm going to use down there. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to kind of start. I'm going to lay there's a little mark on our J-foot right here, and I'm going to lay that mark like right on the very edge of my little flange. I'm just going to tie this off. And if you have you know, if you have like a stitch in the ditch foot or whatever like that, or whatever you like to use to do stitching in the ditch, I just have a tendency to use my J-foot, and I do put my glasses on when I do this. Okay, so I'm just going to stitch just inside, you know, just right along the fold line here, and we're going to stitch all the way around. So I'm just going to do the cream color. So I started on the edge of the pumpkin. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. Sometimes it's hard for me to know exactly where the camera is. And I'm just going to sew around here. And again, I like to use kind of a matching thread so that it doesn't really show. I'm going around here, and I'm going to come up to the next corner. Okay. Turn the corner here. I'm just kind of sewing just to the left of the fold so it doesn't catch the fold, but then it's on that, you know, that background fabric, so it really doesn't show because I've got my thread matching. So I'm usually pretty careful with matchy thread. If I don't have matchy thread, I'll often use monofilament to do this, and then you don't see that very much either. Okay, so I've got around there. I'm going to turn my corner. Now you notice I have my pivot feature on, so that pivot is, let me show you the pivot. I love the pivot feature. I use this all the time. So this is the pivot right here. It's this button. It looks like a foot with a needle down through it. And you can see that when I stop, it goes back to, just like I can't see what I'm doing. There we go. It goes down when I push down on the foot controller, and it goes up when I stop. So I really like that because then I don't have to touch a lot of buttons. I can hang on to my project and not have to touch buttons while I'm going here. All right, so we're going to go around to the other side of the pumpkin here, but then for that pumpkin, I'm going to put my orange thread in. Oops, I kind of went one stitch too many, so let's back up. There we go. All right, so we're going to do this little section right here, and then I'm going to stop right at my pumpkin, and then we'll do the pumpkin with the orange thread. Tie it off. Okay. Then, so cut it, and then I'll go get my orange thread, and we will, oh, I might even make it through without running out of thread. I always seem to have to wind a bobbin for everybody. I do that a lot. Seems like I'm always out of bobbin thread. All right, so we'll stick this up here, and we'll put the orange thread in. So I got this nice matching orange. This is a Pima cotton also. I have a bunch of this thread. I really like it. And they have lots of colors. There's about 50 colors or so. So I have, you know, colors that match almost everything. Finally found a cotton thread I like, and so I do use this a lot now. Okay, so now we're going to go in here and we're going to do this little section for where the pumpkin is. So I'm going to start right on the edge of the pumpkin satin stitch there, and we're going to stitch the ditch along that. Tie it off. So this will show a little bit on the back, but it doesn't show on the front. Because that cream colored thread really showed a lot. I tried it with that and I was like, ooh, I don't like that. So I'd rather have it show a little bit on the back than on the front. Okay, so now we're gonna go to the end of the satin stitch and we'll tie that off. And we've gotten all the way around then. So we stitched in the ditch all the way around. Okay, so you can see the orange on the back a little bit. And I'll trim up some of these little knots that are in here. These little tails. There. So it shows a little bit on the back, but I'd rather it show on the back than on the front. Okay, so there is, we got our little flanges in there. So these were steps like on page 5. This was the putting the back on, page 5 of the instructions. And the flanges are now created because we just sewed through that. Okay, so the next step then is I'm going to go ahead and I am going to put my pillow form in here because I want to put I want the pillow form to be in here when I go to put my flowers on so that I know exactly where they're going to land, because I've tried to do it without the pillow form and I never get the flowers in the right spot then. So let's go ahead and put our little pillow form in here. Pull this back a little bit. So I made my pillow form. Okay, so I'll show you my pillow form. So I made my pillow form. This is made out of muslin, and this ends up 8 by 8. So I cut it 8.5 by 8.5, and then I take a 1/4 inch seam all the way around, and then just leave a little opening. You know, my opening's not usually very pretty because I'm not very good hand stitcher, and then I just stuff it and stitch it shut. So we're going to put this in here. So I really like making my pillow forms. I make a lot of these little pillows and stuff, so I have made a lot of little pillow forms. I think I'm all thumbs tonight. Can't get this in here. There we go. All right, so there's one side. Get the other side in here. Sorry, I had to go stop the phone from ringing. We never get any phone calls here that are worth anything, especially this time of night. So I went and it was just one of those calls. So I made the phone stop ringing. All right, so I've got to get this in here. Second, I haven't got it quite flattened out here. There we go. All right, so I like to get that nice and flat. I think I haven't got this part done. There we go. That looks better. All right, so we get that all nice and flat, and then we're going to turn it over. Okay, so then here's our pillow. So, whoops, second here, I need to fix my corners a little bit. All right, so there's our little pillow form. Well, you know, it looks a little plain, that, doesn't it? So now we need to do our flowers. So we're going to make our flowers, and I pre-did some of my flowers. So the fall flower set has 5 flowers, different flowers in it, and they're called pull flowers. So let me show you the 5. Okay, so here's here's my original sample, and so there's a kind of a black one, kind of a rusty colored flower, brown, yellow, and then there's this little purple. Okay, so they suggested you use 1 of each flower from each one, and you want to cut them in half. So you get about a yard. It's not quite a yard of each flower. So to make the flowers for this, I cut them in half. So there's about 17 or 18 inches here. Okay, so I could get 2 pillows out of 1 set of the pull flowers. So this looks pretty plain like this, but once we put some flowers on it, it's going to be really pretty. Okay, so I made a few of my flowers already, and then we're going to talk about how to do these. Give me a second here. I was going to bring up these flowers. So here's the little rust one. So I made a few of these already, so you didn't have to sit here and watch me make pull flowers for an hour. So I made the yellow one. Here's the brown one. Okay, so they're all different shapes, so they really turn out really cool. And here's the black one. Okay, so we're going to make this purple one in the class. Okay, and I'll show you my little tricks. I'm getting better at these, so I have to grab a needle here. So you do, okay, so when you cut these in half, just so you know, one end, like the whole yard, one end has a knot and the other end doesn't. So if you cut them in half, it's most likely you're not going to have a knot on one end. Okay, one of them will, but one of them won't. So this one is one of those that doesn't have a knot on one end. Well, maybe I do have a knot on this end. Let me see. No, not really. Okay, so what I have to do is, the first thing you need to do is get a needle that has a pretty good size eye in it. So this one's got a pretty good sized eye in it. And I'm going to pull this down a little bit. I'm going to thread this needle, and we're going to tie a knot in one end of this, because you got to have a knot on one end to help you. And this is the hardest part for me, is getting needle threaded. Okay, so I'm just going to pull this up a little bit, and then we're just going to knot this off on this end. Like that. And I'm going to tie it off so that it's not, okay? And one of these, if you've done, if you cut it in half, one side will have a knot, because one end does have a knot on it, but you won't have to do it on both of them. So this one, I had already used the one with the knot, evidently. So, okay, so I got this knotted off on the end here, okay? And I'm going to cut that off so that my little string isn't so long. Oops, there we go. And then I'm going to, now I'm left-handed, just so you know. So I'm going to be doing this from probably the opposite way you're doing it, but it's the same concept. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to thread. Now this one has a little knot on the end. Just a second here. Let me get that knot out of there. My thread. I don't want a knot in my thread because then it won't work. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to thread this side of the thread that's in the pull flower. Maybe. Got to lick the end. They're always this thread. Sometimes I actually take the thread out and use different thread, because the thread is sometimes it's kind of silky and it's a little hard to work with. But I've been doing pretty good with most of these lately. Okay, I still can't. This one's being contrary. It's because I'm on camera. So let's see if I can get this in the needle here. You need a needle with a pretty good eye, because the thread is not real thin and it's a little bit it likes to break, it likes to split. And that's what this one's doing, because I have to be on camera. So it's splitting on me. Let's see if I can get it threaded. I may have to get a different needle with a bigger eye. This one is just not going to work, I don't think. Let me grab another one here. So you see, you have to see that it happens to me too. Let's see here. Let's get this. This is kind of a big needle, but it'll work. Has a bigger eye in it. There we go. This will work. But the thread is kind of, it splits really easy. It's kind of soft, and so I struggle with that. It's even not working well with this one. Oh, well, you get to see me struggle tonight. Let's try that again. There it went. Okay, so hopefully we won't have to thread that again for a while. Okay, so then what I do is I try to kind of lay this out, and the trick is to keep your petals kind of all going the same direction. So when they start to turn around like this, I kind of get them turned so that they're all going the same way. All right, then you know where you're at. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of pull these up. Okay, get them kind of close to the end, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to the end, and I'm going to find the knot, which is right here, and I want to take a stitch through that knot. Okay, so I'm going to go down and take a stitch right through my knot, because then I know it starts and stops at the same place. Okay, try to keep everything straight, keep your petals going the same way. Okay, so then we kind of know we got a circle going all the same direction here. Okay, so then I'm going to slowly keep pulling until it gets tight, keeping all my petals down, and then I kind of hold it so that everything's going the same direction here, like that, and keep them tight. Okay, so see, I've got it tighter now. But the trick is to go through the stitch where you started. So you kind of start and stop in the same spot. So I've learned that that works better for me. And then I'm going to take a stitch like through that same area and tie that off a little tighter, like that. Okay, so I got that first stitch in there, and now I want to go across. I'm going to try to hold these all together here in a second. This one's a little slippery, so I want to hold that, and I'm going to just sew across all the petals from side to side a couple times so that it holds it all together in the center. I think I'm a little bit deep there, so I'm going to pull up a little. So I'm just going to take some stitches across the middle. So I like these to be as tight as I can get them, because then they lay nicer when you go to put them on the pillow. Okay. There's that. Just taking a few more stitches to hold it really nice and tight. All right, let's see how it looks here. So then when they're tight, then you can kind of play with the little petals and they just kind of lay out. Okay, that looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and take a couple more stitches in there, and then we'll tie it off. Okay. All right, so then I'm going to tie in there, and then what I like to do is pull a loop and then go around through the loop with my needle and twist it around a couple of times, and then that ties a really nice tight knot in there. So there's our little flower. And then what I do when I'm ready to use it, then I kind of, play with the petals and get them to lay down. But you want them to be pretty tight, otherwise they come apart real easy. And but I've learned that if I take it through, get it all kind of organized and start pulling, and then I take a stitch through the same spot where the knot is, and then keep my petals all going the same direction and just pull it tight, then I can hold on to it so that all my petals are the same direction like this, and then I start just tying it off in the back. So I am getting better at them. They do look much better, I think. Okay, so we're going to trim this off. Put my needle in here so I won't stab myself. Okay. All right, so there are our 5. I did one in the class. I figured you didn't want to sit here and watch me make pull flowers all night, so I made a few of them in advance. So here's the purple one, here's the brown one. Okay, this was a different shape. See, the petals are totally different shape on this one. And then here's the yellow one's smaller, little yellow one, and then these 2 larger ones. So this one's the kind of rust colored one, and this is the black one. Okay, so if you give me a minute, I'm going to go plug my glue gun in, and we're going to put these on. So I have to go get my glue gun warmed up. All right, so now for the tough part for me is arranging the flowers on the pillow. So I kind of got them, I kind of figured out how I kind of wanted them. So I'm just going to kind of hold them up here. I think I'm going to do them kind of like I did them before. And you don't want them, you want to make sure that you get up on the pillow a little bit so that you have some height up here. So you don't have so much empty space at the top. So when I first put my flowers on, I had to take them off because I got them a little bit too low. So I'm going to make sure that I hold this up above the flower, or above the top of the pumpkin a little bit. So my machine's kind of in the way here, but you can kind of see. I think we'll start with the center one, and I just want to make sure that I've got a little bit of room so that I bring it up a little bit, and I've got it up above the base, maybe about, you can see, I don't know if you can see on this one, but I've got it above the base just a little bit, and then we can pull the flower petals around. So, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to glue these on. That's why I like the pillow in here, because then I can tell if I'm getting about where I want them. So, pull this back a little bit. I'm going to lay a little flatter on my table, and I'm going to go ahead and let's get this one glued on. So I got my glue gun here. I'm going to put some glue on the back of this. And you need, you know, use you don't need a ton of glue, but you want enough that it will stay on there nice. Okay, so let's just kind of put that. I need a little space above it, like that. I'm just going to press down on it. Okay, so we'll kind of put the black one in the center. Okay, and then we're going to do the rusty colored one. So I put that one over here. And again, I'm going to pull it up a little bit so that it kind of contours the top of that little pumpkin. Okay, so I think that'll be good. So let's put some glue on the back of that one. Can't get my glue stick to stay in there. I'm about out of glue stick, so it's switching over to a new one. All right, so let's kind of put this in here like this. Okay, and then we'll play around with the petals a little bit so we can kind of intermingle them, because these were both kind of big flowers. And then the brown one was the one that I'd put over here on the side. So the brown one's kind of over here on the side. So let's see. Okay, let's see if this one will fit over here. Like that. That'll look good. We'll put that one over there. So I kind of looked at a couple of the pictures and to see how I wanted it. And I found a picture on my girlfriend's quilt shop, and they had kind of done it this way. And I thought, well, that's kind of pretty. And all 5 flowers were separate on there. Mom always told me you should have an odd number of things. You shouldn't have even numbers. Well, because some of the ones I saw only had 4 flowers, because they put the brown flowers around the yellow flower. And I thought, well, that's an even number. I shouldn't have an even number. So I kind of wanted to use all the colors though. Okay, so there's the bottom 3. Okay, so that looks pretty good. And then I'm going to put the purple and the yellow one up here. Let's see, we'll put the purple one like that, because you want to, make sure that you don't have too much empty space at the top of the pillow. And then the yellow one maybe like right in here. Like that. So I think that'll work. Okay, so let's put some glue in the back of the purple one here. Put that on first. So this is not the easiest part for me. I'm not a very good flower person. So I always struggle when I have to put flowers on stuff. So I bet most of you will do much better than me, but I just thought this was cute. Okay, so we're going to kind of turn this. I think I want it this way. There we go. Like that. And then we're going to put so I'm kind of pressing down on it to make sure they're sticking good. And then I'll put this little yellow one. The yellow one's the smallest one. And then kind of tuck this one in there, like that. What do you think? So there's our little flowers. So some of you ordered kits. So the pull flowers do not come with the kit. You do have to buy your own pull flowers, because you use, most of them. And the pull flowers, like I got both of these out of one pack of pull flowers. So if you're going to make a couple of these pillows, you can get 2 of them out of one. There. What do you think? So then we can play with the petals, and you can kind of play with the way they turn out. But isn't that cute? And there's our little pillow. And that's the square one, and they called it, what did they call it? Flower pumpkin. Flower pumpkin is what they called it. So there we go. So I got both of them done. My little flower pumpkin. What a fun project. And the sewing and the embroidery is so easy, and most of the decoration on this one is the pull flowers. So there. I think we're all done. I think I need to play with my petals a little bit here with the black one and the rust one, but other than that, it looks like it's doing pretty good. When I first made those pull flowers, I had never done any with those long petals like that, so Those are cool. Okay, so there's my little flower pumpkin, and this is the square bench buddy for November. So now we've got both of the November bench buddies done, and then we'll start working on the December ones. I'm excited to do the December ones. They're the little Christmas ones. Are so cute. So that'll be the next ones, and those will be done live. And these are recorded so that we can do May Your Days Be Merry and Bright in November. So, all right, thanks everybody for joining me for the bench buddy for the fall flower pumpkin. Thanks everybody. Have a good evening.